right, so let's get started. Just first off, tell us a little bit about working with Keith. What is it like?
Well, I started working with Keith in 1987 when he first came to the station, and I worked with him in many capacities. And one of the things that I found about Keith that was so terrific is that he's really unflappable. And there's no ego. The man that you see on camera is the same man that you see off camera. There's something to be said for that because as news director, I would assign Keith different stories, and he took all of them without hesitation. But one of the stories that I think is very important to tell in my tenure as news director working with Keith was the night of the crash of Flight 3407. It happened right after 10 o'clock, we'll say, and Keith, when he heard the scanners go off, and I was at the station at the time, we heard the scanners go off and we kept hearing small plane crash, small plane crash. And I remember Keith going over to the wall where we had a map at the time. It's probably not there now, but there was a map on the wall. And here, I'll just turn this way to kind of maybe give you the example. And he kept going like this to the map over the area of Long Street. And I said, Keith, what are you doing? He said, I don't think it's a small plane. That's the approach of for regular jets when they make their approach for landing. I said, Keith, do you really think that was a jet and not a small plane? He said, I really believe that. And Keith's interest in aviation and his expertise gave all of us the security that we could go on the air and say that we believe that the plane that crashed or reportedly crashed was more significant than a small plane. And we led the news that night. There was confusion all over the place. And our competitors were waffling. We never did. We stayed with it. We led with it. And I think, honestly, because of Keith's, again, unflappable sense and his knowledge, and then, of course, we stayed on the air for hours and hours after that.
That night is one of those nights that'll just remain in my memory for forever. And yeah, Keith, if there's one theme that I keep hearing over and over is just how humble Keith is. There's no ego there. So talk to me just a little bit about the man.
Well, Keith Radford is a regular guy. I'm sure you've heard some stories from some others about his love of fishing and his love of apple pie and baking pies. His sensibilities are of the everyman. And I think that's why his career has endured so much, because he is one of us. He's somebody who, enjoys a fish fry just like everybody else. He's somebody that enjoys, a glass of beer with a buddy at a bar. And more than that, he has a great sense of humor. When we were doing the PM Buffalo program at 4 o'clock, Linda Pellegrino was hosting, and at 4:30 we would do a news break. And Keith would join Linda on the couch. And it was very reminiscent of what you would remember with Regis and Kathy Lee. Keith would deliver the news brief, and then he and Linda had this ad-libbed banter that, off the cuff, was probably some of the funniest television I ever remember. So I think that speaks to his ability to connect with people, not only off camera, but on camera.
And people often talk about the patriarchs of Western New York media. We hear about Tom Jones, Irv, we hear about Rick. In years to come, where will Keith rank amongst those men?
He will be in that same league. There's no question. And it's not because he's been on so long. Some people will say to me particularly, well, you've been in TV a long time. Well, okay, that's great. I've been in TV a long time, and I really value that, and I appreciate it. But you have to be able to contribute, and you have to be able to create content and leave a legacy, and he's done that. When you think about everything that he's covered, the Gulf War, the O.J. Simpson trial, the crash of Flight 3407, countless storms, political controversies, presidents, all of the major stories, Canadian connections, all of that stands as his legacy, and that's why he'll be in that same league as the media elite in Western New York.
So tell us something about Keith that you witnessed that people in Western New York might not know about, something that Keith loves.
Well, as we said, Keith has a very good sense of humor, and every Thursday night for many years, we would record the Offbeat Cinema program, which aired Saturday nights on Channel 7. And Keith would always come in, and it was in between newscasts and after the news briefs, and he would come in and spend time with the cast. And then he decided to sit on the sofa and join the cast. And there was one night we had a legendary, he's now passed on, a legendary rock and roll, not rock, but legendary performance artist, Mark Freeland. And Mark was in, and Offbeat Cinema was very avant-garde, and still is. So Keith joined in, and there he is in his suit, and there's Mark Freeland and his band of merry music makers and the cast of the show, the Beatniks. And Mark was singing a classic song called Alien on My Jacket, because the movie was about aliens. And Keith is there, cool as a cucumber. It was one of the funniest things I've ever seen. I don't know if many people have seen it. It's a big hit now on YouTube, so there you go, it lives on.
You sent that along, and I remember I just watched it a couple days ago, and this is different, but it's hilarious. It's hilarious. But so we're definitely going to include that.
Well, you know, and the thing about Keith, Shannon, but I think is important to note, not everybody can do that. You know, you have news anchors who are very good at what they do, and reporters, but to cross over and do something, whether it's conversing with Linda Pellegrino on a live talk show or appearing in a skit comedy, and walking away from it and knowing that you haven't tarnished your reputation or done anything untoward is not something that everybody can do. But Keith was able to balance all that. He really enjoyed meeting Regis Philbin too, by the way. I think they shared a great camaraderie over those many years.
All right, so I'm going to leave the last little bit to you. Here's your chance to send well wishes and congratulations to Keith.
Well, Keith Radford, you know, we've done many Variety Kids telethons together. I think one of them was with Jill's outfit. We produced over 23 ball drop shows as your producer for every New Year's Eve, you know, yelling in your ear for the countdown. You are the Dick Clark of Buffalo. But more than anything, Keith, I know that your love of Sinatra music was something that left us with a great feature that we ended up doing on Eyewitness News at 5 called Fridays with Frankie. Remember that with your puppy at the time? So one of the things I wanted to show you, and we'll come over and show this. This was one of Keith's favorite paintings. This is a Leroy Neiman of Frank Sinatra. And this was in my office. And when I left Channel 7, Keith helped me to my car, and he brought this painting. And it reminded me of a classic song that Frank sang called It Was a Very Good Year. So I think in honor of Keith, we can change the lyrics, and Frank should be singing up there in heaven for you, Keith. It was a very good career.